Hello and welcome to another episode of the Quarantine Conversations with IU Arts and Humanities, co-front with REEI. And this is the Pro-Ruski video cast. And this is the arts and culture response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Andréa Stanislav, Associate Professor in the Eskenazi School of Art. And I'm very pleased today to introduce you to our guest, Anna Bitkina, who is a curator, and she works out of the Netherlands and St. Petersburg, Russia, and is international as well. So I'm going to hand it over to her, and she'll talk about some of her projects and responses that she's been witness to in the pandemic. Okay. So could you please tell us a little bit about, first who you are, and also what are you currently working on? What responses are you aware of in terms of the pandemic?
Thank you very much, Andrea, for inviting me for an interview. I'll be happy to share my experiences and also my observations which happened around, I guess, during this pandemic, during this almost two months, I guess, more than 2 months, this kind of new modus in which we are existing. I work as an independent curator, but also I'm a part of a curatorial collective called TOK, T-O-K, Creative Association of Curators, which me and my colleague Marie Waits founded more than 10 years ago. So we've been starting our practice in St. Petersburg. We've always been pretty nomadic organization. So we never had any space, any office. So for us, in a way, working remotely or working in a distance, it's a very usual condition. So in this sense, it didn't really affect our work because we've been nomadic for more than 10 years, living in St. Petersburg before, but now our personal situation changed. And for the last few years, we've been living in Israel and me in the Netherlands, and still composing and curating projects in Russia. So our practice is very much connected to the region, but also we're becoming more and more international. So our nomadism becoming, I guess, more global than in the past. And as a collective, we're very much responding in our practice to different political and ecological challenges. And so for the our latest project, which were very much connected to to revisiting different understanding of educational, political, and technological strategies which are used by government, by education, by media, also with involvement of high technology, informing understanding of the other, but also how political views of citizens are also formed. So, we've been different projects also connected to the educational system, for instance, looking at the Russian educational system to see how through different policies, through different programming, citizenship is built, and how, for instance, state building in the Soviet time was formed. We're looking at the different spatial experiences, at the architecture of schools. We're also looking at the different structures within educational system. But we're also diving into different social domains like public space, local governance. For us, interesting to dig deeper into the post-Soviet conditions and what happened exactly in the region after the collapse of Soviet Union and accelerated very swift and very quick turn into sort of a capitalist way of living. So what happened in between? So now after 25 years, after more than 25 years, 30 years actually, after almost 30 years after collapse of Soviet Union, I guess we have a good historical distance to reflect, and I guess like my generation or younger generation have a privilege to understand the Soviet system, but also post-Soviet conditions. So like I grew up during Soviet time, and now I'm also like experience different understanding of how, for instance, Western world is operating. So this also gives you this kind of political and social sensitivity to understand different codes and compare them, and also look at different political structure and political heritage in order to sort of think what are the pro and contra within this both ideologies, and what could be basically revisit and rethought in order to think about potential and more sensible and reasonable and sustainable future. So that's what my personal curatorial practice and practice of talk is very much dealing with. And thinking, oh yes, sorry.
No, go on. I didn't, that's a thing.
No, and just thinking about this situation of slowing down, the situation when you have a possibility to maybe stop living in the modus of planning, but rather learn how to live in the current situation, in the situation of present. I guess it's also different state in a way. I'm a kind of very physical person. I really learn about the world through my body. So for me, it's and my body is very much responding to what is going on in terms of like the speed, the timing, the duration, every like task is taking, the cohabitation with different people, with family members, and the relation to the outside environment also that's kind of body language is changing very much. And I think your mind is like, I can talk about my personal experience. I guess like my body is from the flow of different information in the media about pandemic is very much polluted with the medical terms, and I'm kind of like started to be interested very much in biology. I've been listening this old lecture by Donna Haraway last night. Okay. And I was very much impressed her knowledge in biology, because she is like a trained scientist and biologist. Mm-hmm. And then kind of she was talking about for 1 hour about the behavior of different bacteria, and I was fascinated. And I was just like listening to this, that I kind of like, I want to be a biologist. Maybe it's a time also to think about other profession, really. Right. So that's but also like I always been interested about like how our body reacting on different political and social situations. And I started to also be diving in terms of reading into the impact on community and also on governmental policies and biopolicies, such things through the last century, like and different viruses, like saying tuberculosis, like how different societies were dealing with this, like historically what actually this disease did to Western civilization. Mm-hmm. Or like syphilis, right? How it's positioned different gender and sex workers, and what was the position of the how it's changed the immunity of this white Christian male, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. And also AIDS, pretty recent history, and how the society dealt with that. And it was interesting to remember my youth and childhood when AIDS became very present in the media and newspapers and our outlets discourse, and how it became very much of a discourse in education and in in the environment of clinics. And yeah, and then I started to also so kind of like reflect on different policies that I ever encountered in connection to checkups of different disease.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I traveled to the States for the first time, I think I had to pass also my AIDS test, whether I was negative or positive. So that also was a sort of a gate opener for me to enter the US. Or like, for instance, in order to be a resident or be a resident for a certain durational time in the Netherlands, I needed to pass this tuberculosis test. So basically, this old disease is still traveling with me as a carrier of Soviet past, or like Russian citizenship, or certain mythology or cliche about people from the East, what sort of disease they could carry. So that's kind of like I started to dive into this, and I guess Corona became this kind of instigator for that kind of thoughts.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. No, that's very interesting. And I also grew up at a time when in art school the conversation and art making was absolutely I would say weighted by the AIDS epidemic at that time. So I'm wondering, as you move forward in your curatorial practice, what are there new critiques, new questions that you've mentioned some of these already, but new questions or the conversations that you might be presenting in your work, or that you're thinking about. So you've definitely talked about sort of where your mind is right now, and the biology is also interesting. Might there be a talk project that deals with, biology or viruses and the politics of that?
Yeah, we are very much lately preoccupied with this, with the understanding of different borderlines in connection to climate crisis, and like how we, in the situation, sharing different territories which are divided by state borders, how we can deal with the situation when it's affecting everyone. And those borders are very physical, but at the same time, if like some catastrophes are happening next door, you can't be immune to this. You are affected. You are not able to hide in a way. And so I guess understanding of this shared future, shared past, or shared territory is, I guess, preoccupying mind of many people now, like how we can coexist together without this preconception of the other. So without like fearing other, how we can create this civilized environment, so we're not going to be violent towards each other. And also, how can we think about maybe potential new moral framework of how to behave toward each other outside of our small communities, which is family or friends, like how we can stop, how to overcome this fear, how to look at this genealogy of this fear, which is very much embedded, I think, into Western understanding of the foreigner.
Right. I think that there's a duality there in terms of bringing people together, and in terms of, I'm thinking about the projects that Talk has done. Many times they're directly about conversations, about performance events, but there is, as you were saying, there's quite a physicality to the events and your programming in terms of as a curator. So when things move online as they are, and we don't know for how long, do you feel that your work translates online in the same way? I do know that Talk has a website, and I'll share the link. But
well, we're not really online people. It's not our main place to kind of establish dialogue, but we do move a couple of projects online, which were which are scheduled for the fall.
Okay.
So that's somehow is going to be done. And on the other hand, there are some challenges, of course, in especially in discursive practices and performative practices that are going to be shown online. Of course, it's a very big platform, and it really gives you to reach out much bigger audiences. But of course, nothing can replace or substitute this kind of physical presence in a space where performance is happening, right? So this experience, this bodily experience, collective bodily experience is, of course, an emotional experience. Is very much, it's irreplaceable. But yeah, so we look at positive sides of what how we can benefit from the situation, how we can be useful in the situation, what sort of a message we should really convey in this situation. But I think it's also the responsibility what message you're forming is increasing, because the information is growing and everyone is throwing into the air or into this internet space different opinions. But it's also very important to, I guess, like to think carefully what you're throwing out there or what you're delivering out there, to develop maybe new ecology of information distribution and consumption, because like lots of different opinions, sometimes based on different emotions or different cultural backgrounds and misunderstandings, can like really mislead people that maybe have different, like high level of sensitivity, different level of education. And so that's something also to rethink about. Right. And yeah, so I guess like our role as curators is also becoming more responsible, and I think it's concerned everyone who is working in the profession that it's meant to develop certain meanings. Right. Talk about so the project, maybe I can talk about the upcoming project which we were planning for Minneapolis, and that's which is States of Control, and it's called States of Control. That's the project which is continuing. It's a continuation, it's an ongoing research about this, as I said, different processes that lie behind this process, which is affecting the understanding of politics or affect political views of citizens. So what processes are there? How are you becoming politically active or politically passive? What are the processes behind it? Educational, governmental, technological. And we plan to have a big project in Minneapolis, in Weizmann Museum, in relation to the upcoming presidential election, and actually to raise the subject about election in general, election as the only basically political possibility to, basically the only possibility to express your political will, which potentially can affect certain period of your life. And we want to question this process in general and to see whether that's election as a process is still the only way, or it should be maybe reformulated, restructured, because lots of corruptions, lots of manipulations is hidden behind this. And so basically we wanted to build up a public platform to discuss all of this from the position of political theory, history, from philosophy, critical theory, and also artistic practice and performative practice as well. So we will carry on with this project, but it will be most likely moved online. So we're going to have that platform online. and it's scheduled for November. We want still to do it before or during the presidential elections in the US.
Okay.
Although it's targeted towards the upcoming presidential election in the States, but we also want to look at this on a broader sense and also take under considerations election processes in different geographies as well, and think actually about possibilities and potentiality of expression of political will. So that's something, I guess, as a little information about our most definite projects. We have also a project about real estate and housing, and I think in the situation, this 5th season of critical mass of our project, which we've been conducting in St. Petersburg for the last 10 years. Yeah. So the 5th season is the project deals with different themes and inquiries that concern the contemporary cities and the way how people live there and how they affect how they can improve their environment in which they live. So the 5th season is focused on this housing and real estate. We're supposed to have it's a research-based project, and we plan to present the artistic outcome of the research in St. Petersburg in September, October, but I guess that's going to be moved for the next year as well.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that. I'm interested in
that.
Yeah,
It's going to be very interesting for us. It's also, I mean, I guess housing, it's a problem that concerns like really many people, and especially in the situation of pandemic, when lots of people willingly or unwillingly have to cohabitate together. In Russia, as you know, there is lots of cases of domestic violence when people found themselves like kind of stuck in the same apartment, and they have no way to go. So there is so it's really looking at how housing is designed, how it's being distributed in Soviet time, and how it's designed and distributed now. It's also showing lots of nuances of our socio-political condition in which we exist. Its reflection on body, in effect of mind, and right. Like how the situation of mortgage is damaging people psychologically when you have to kind of like think about this burden, or any kind of credits in connection to real estate is of course very psychologically tense and damaging. It creates lots of different side effects like psychological diseases.
Your links as well.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the pandemic and how we're coming out of it to hopefully now, or how we're going to be existing with it as well.
And I think in relation to housing, I should mention one project, upcoming project, which we are very much proud of, because it's being our idea of create an exhibition about domestic violence and the rights of female in the society, or gender rights within legislative system for a long time. And now we finally got a funding and got through to the final of with our curatorial proposal of that project, which called Voicing the Silence. Mm-hmm. And we became final for international open call of Apex Art, which is do you know this organization in New York?
Fantastic.
So it's extremely competitive way, because it's like 500 different people are looking at your exhibition proposal, and we applied several times, and finally, I mean, with different project, but with this we applied first time and we got it. And we are very happy to be among these 4 projects that are being supported, and the exhibition, again, called Voicing the Silence. which unite Russian and international female artists, is going to be shown in Moscow, most likely spring, summer next year.
Very exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've been, that was a very long wanted projects to be supported. Yeah.
Well deserved. Very, very well deserved.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to continue to, if you can keep us up to date at REI and at IU too. Would like to keep abreast of this project.
And hopefully to see colleagues and you very soon in person.
Yes, we're hoping so. If not this fall, in the spring. So
yes,
fingers crossed. Okay, thank you so much, Anna, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and I wish you health and well-being. So
yes, you too. Thank you.
Okay.